NYFA, the state's watchdog agency, has approved Nassau's budget for the next year. On News 12 Long Island's Jackie Lucas tells us what's in the spending plan. She joins us now from the newsroom. Jackie.
Colleen, tonight NYFA approved the county's 2012 budget and multi-year plan, saying it would be worse to reject it rather than shut the county down. Still, members said today that the plan is far from ideal.
In my judgment, the county has no credibility because time and again in dealing with fiscal matters, the county has been disingenuous, deceptive, and delusional.
Harsh words from NYFA Board Director George Marlin. Although he said during a meeting today he had little faith in the county's ability, he voted to approve Nassau's 2012 budget and multi-year plan. As a whole, the NYFA board voted 5-2 to approve the plan. In it, labor unions still have to negotiate with the county executive and agree to $150 million in concessions to help close the budget gap.
Well, he's asking for the world, and it's not feasible.
Unions have to come up with $75 million in concessions by next week, and then another $75 million by next year. CSEA President Jerry Larracuda says his #1 priority is to try and save jobs. But he says the reality is that nearly 400 jobs could be on the chopping block.
Unfortunately, it looks like we're going to do the best we can to get some kind of an incentive out to mitigate against the layoffs. But with this particular 4-year plan and the amount of givebacks that they're looking for in order to save it, it's unrealistic, it's unattainable. We've always said that. So we're probably going to have to suffer some more layoffs right in the middle of the holidays.
NYFA Chairman Ronald Stack had this message to union leaders and the county executive.
Negotiate and work together. They have the same objective, which is to save the county money, serve the county residents, and to do it without a minimal amount, if any, layoffs as possible.
And in a statement tonight, County Executive Ed Mangano said the approval of the budget plan will put Nassau on the road to recovery. The deadline for the county executive and unions to negotiate on concessions is December 15th. Judy?
Getting close. Last night, a Nassau Legislative Committee approved the layoffs of hundreds of county workers unless they make significant concessions. Of the close to 6,000 Nassau County workers CSEA Local 830 represents, at least 300 of those workers tonight are fearing the loss of their jobs before year's end. Last night, a Nassau Legislative Committee turned up the heat on labor leaders to come up with $75 million worth of concessions by Thursday as they approved the layoffs of hundreds of county employees.
People are scared. You know, they're fearful. They want to fight for their lives.
Ryan Maholland, a representative of CSEA, says under County Executive Mangano's plan to get the county back on track financially, they already had to lay off 128 workers earlier this year, and now they are faced with having to do it all again. But this time, many more jobs are at risk. At least 300 of CSEA's workers would be demoted or lose their jobs entirely. Maholland says they have negotiated close to a dozen times, but the county executive still wants their workers to give up more, close to $55 million in concessions, and he says that's just unattainable.
That's like $12,000 per employee. We have a lot of employees in this county making $30,000, $35,000 a year. We even have some people who work in social services who qualify for social services like food stamps and things like that.
Now, if $75 million worth of concessions aren't brought to the table by county unions by Thursday's deadline, that could mean the layoffs and demotions will take place as early as December 29th. So what is CSEA trying to do to avoid the cuts? They plan to offer an early retirement incentive package to hopefully persuade some of the highest earners to retire.
We would hope to get out, $15 million worth of people, $20 million worth of people to leave voluntarily.
Meanwhile, County Executive Mangano is already warning there will need to be yet another round of big cuts come February when he wants another $75 million in savings from workers.
Today is the deadline day for unions in Nassau to come up with millions in concessions or face layoffs. What kind of impact could those cuts have? News 12 Long Island's Jill Wagner joins us now from the newsroom. Jill?
Well, Lee, right now the county's biggest union is trying to work out a deal to offer workers retirement incentives instead of some of those layoffs. But either way, it seems all but guaranteed the county workforce will get smaller, and some of those cuts could hurt.
I don't have any reasonable idea how this is going to be done successfully and safely.
The work will not get done.
Nassau workers sounding the alarm as every county department, from public works to social services, is about to get slashed.
At the end of the day, I must stay within budget that's been allotted us to pay for payroll.
For weeks, Nassau Executive Ed Mangano has warned the workforce, fined $75 million in savings by today and another $75 million by February, or else hundreds will lose their jobs. And with no deal on the table, the plan is for roughly 400 layoffs by January 1st. 200 more workers will be demoted and about 200 vacant positions eliminated. And that's on top of previous layoffs earlier this year. So where does that leave the county workforce? In 2010, when Mangano took office, he says there were more than 8,800 workers. By 2012, that number could be down to about 7,400, a reduction of more than 15%. Mangano says he has no choice because raising taxes is off the table, and he says each department head chose which positions will be eliminated. But workers say
it's going to decimate services.
Glenn Tufel is with the Department of Social Services. Robert Campo is with the Department of Public Works. They plow roads, do engineering, and take care of the sewers. Both say their departments are already stretched thin.
And we're like supposed to be the stopgap to prevent horrible things from happening. And I think we're taking serious risks with these people and their health and safety.
And the CSEA says they are ready to file lawsuits against some of these layoffs, especially if private contractors are being hired to fill the job role of the CSEA member. Meanwhile, negotiations between the unions and the county executive are still ongoing, and the legislature is set to vote on those layoffs on Monday.
With the Nassau legislature layoff vote looming, one union is hoping that the vote will pass and that their employees won't get laid off.
There's still no deal, and as Monday's vote nears, Nassau County workers are anticipating the outcome. Whether County Executive Ed Mangano's plan will force CSEA workers to give up more, close to $55 million in concessions, and force hundreds to be demoted or even lose their jobs. Preparing for the worst, CSEA has created an incentive package that Ryan Mahalan says may help people without being forced to leave and ultimately save as many jobs as possible.
You could take an incentive for $1,000 for every single year that you have of service, and that would get people to leave voluntarily instead of be laid off.
In order for the vote to pass, Mahalan says the Democrats and Republicans need to come to an agreement. But the clock is ticking for CSEA members and union workers if cuts are made to departments that are already tight.
We have people from probation, public works, social services. Those are some of the titles and departments that would be hit the hardest from a potential layoff if it does go through on Monday.
Back in June, CSEA was faced with 128 layoffs. So if Monday's vote isn't passed, they say more than 350 layoffs can be made, which is potentially 6% of their workforce.
To make further cuts in areas such as social services, where there are mandated services that need to be provided to residents, such as Medicaid, food stamps, things like that. It's going to be very difficult to provide the services to the residents that our members do.
In Mineola, Jody Goldberg, TV 10 and 55 News. And in order for the vote to pass, NYFA will also have to sign off.
May.
Nassau County workers starting to feel the effects of the county's cost-cutting plan. Today, some employees are being demoted. Tomorrow is when the pink slips are expected to be handed out. News 12 Long Island's Jackie Lucas live now in Uniondale to see how the cuts are already affecting residents. Jackie?
Well, Lee, we're here in front of the Department of Social Services building where dozens of employees have been demoted today. One employee telling me the news is devastating.
This is by far the worst I've ever seen it. I mean, the tension is so thick in there. It's just impossible to work in it today.
Milton Cullum has worked for Nassau's Department of Social Services for 24 years. He says it's like a funeral today in the office. Supervisors are going around and demoting employees as part of the county's plan to save money and close the budget gap.
The people are so upset. I mean, they're sad, they're crying. They don't know how they're going to, pay their bills.
In DSS alone, more than 80 people were demoted today. Tomorrow come the layoffs. At least 100 employees in DSS are expected to lose their job. In all, more than 300 Nassau employees will be fired. The cuts caused some problems today at the DSS building. Listen to what some clients had to say.
It's so backed up. It's crazy, and it's like some people that have been standing down here all day wait till like this time to tell them that we don't have a lot of workers, you have to come back Tuesday.
There are not enough workers right now, and the layoffs are getting ridiculous. There are more people that are applying for assistance while there's not enough people to help them.
A spokesperson for the Department of Social Services told News 12 under no circumstances are any emergency cases being turned away for assistance. Still, Kevin from Hempstead described the situation as ridiculous.
It's unacceptable for the people that's getting DSS. They shouldn't do them like that. They should have did it a better way.
And union officials say there's about 92 employees who have already agreed to the county's early retirement incentive, where they'll get $1,000 for every year of service with the county. Now, again, tomorrow is going to be a tough day for lots of county workers, where more than 300 county employees are expected to be laid off. We're live in Uniondale. I'm Jackie Lucas, News 12 Long Island. Stone?
Tough.
At a time when prescription drug addiction and abuse here on the island has reached epidemic proportions, there may be a plan in the works that would drastically cut treatment for drug addicts. News 12 Long Island's Jill Wagner joins us now from the newsroom. Jill?
Well, Lee, News 12 has learned that Nassau University Medical Center may close its entire detox center and cut its in-house rehabilitation program. Experts say this couldn't come at a worse time.
It's not hard to see the devastating consequences of drug addiction on Long Island, with 2 deadly pharmacy robberies in just the past year. But now there's a chance treatment for addicts who want help is about to get slashed.
There's a real possibility that NUMIC will close their detox unit.
Nassau University Medical Center is the county's only public hospital and one of the few places on the island an addict can go, even if they can't pay for treatment. Jeff Reynolds with the Long Island Coalition Against Drugs and Alcohol says he's hearing the hospital may shut down the entire detox program, about 20 beds, and cut about a third of the rehab spots. It's in order to save money and make the hospital more efficient to qualify for a state grant.
The hospital, I think, is under a lot of cost pressures, as is everybody else. Having said that, if this goes through, we'll have very few resources for folks who say, today's the day, I want a fresh start. I don't want to go do something that's desperate.
No one from hospital management would talk to News 12 on camera, but the director of public affairs released a statement saying, quote, "We evaluate various options at our internal planning meetings and no decisions have been made yet." Ken Nicholson is the president of the union at the hospital and a certified alcohol and substance abuse leader. He says right now more people are coming in for treatment than they have room to help. And if anything, the hospital should be adding beds.
We are in a crisis, an addiction crisis.
And Nicholson tells me the plan may be to add outpatient service instead, which is less expensive, but he says it is not nearly as effective. Stone.
All right, Jill, thanks. And meanwhile,
call now and get cooking.
For your 5 free cookbooks and free meal planning guide, call 1-800-336-4074. That's 1-800-336-4074.
As local news gets. News 12, Long Island.
Welcome back. Critics say it is a bitter pill to swallow. NUMC is vying to win millions in state grant money.
however, to get that cash, first the hospital plans to cut. News 12 Long Island's Andrew Anger joins us now from the newsroom to explain. Andrew?
Guys, NUMC officials have a unique plan. To save healthcare costs, it wants to remove 50 inpatient beds. But in exchange, it wants to increase preventative care, which is much cheaper. However, some who rely on the specialty inpatient care the hospital offers aren't so sure about the idea.
This is the one place where everybody I've ever spoken to knows to go to.
Brian Kaminsky has struggled with substance abuse, and he credits his stays at NUMC's inpatient detox center for getting him healthy. But the hospital wants to slash the number of beds in the detox and other units to save money. Brian thinks that's a mistake since NUMC is one of the last public inpatient detox centers left on the island.
A lot of people from Suffolk come over here, so it's already overcrowded as is. And with them closing this off now, it's just going to be, worse.
The proposal approved by NUMC's board of directors today would cut the number of medical and surgical beds by 30, inpatient detox beds by 10, and remove 10 chemical dependency rehab beds. That would qualify NUMC for a possible $30 million state grant to reward it for operating more efficiently. Hospital officials say they will compensate for the bed cuts by expanding primary and preventative care as well as outpatient substance abuse programs. Hospital President Arthur Gianelli says the idea is to reduce the need for hospital beds.
It's not just about managing the care of people who come in your doors. It's about keeping people healthy so they don't ever come in your doors.
But veteran drug counselor Jeff Reynolds says cutting detox beds in the middle of a major substance abuse epidemic on the island is a big gamble.
I think the key thing is when folks are ready to get help, we want to make sure that the help is available to them.
The bed cut plan still has to be approved by Albany, which we're told could take several months. So for now, none of the units are reducing the number of beds. Stacy?
Thanks, Andrew. Now that leads us to our question of the day. Do you think NUMC should cut patient beds in order to qualify for that $30 million state grant? 11 o'clock.
Back around here, Nassau County is having a tough time balancing its budget, and yet the county has let millions of dollars in traffic and parking tickets go unpaid. Now there's an offer to help the county go after those who refuse to pay up. CBS 2's Carolyn Gussoff has the story.
Ever get caught by a red light camera?
I just don't think they do as much good as, people hope they do.
Drivers love to hate them.
I haven't paid yet.
Why not?
Because I don't believe I ran a red light.
Certainly they're out there to make money, I think.
But if they are installed in part to make money, Nassau's not cashing in. The county has failed to collect $10 million in unpaid red light camera fines, plus $26 million in parking tickets, $44 million in traffic fines. That's 107,000 red light camera fines alone that have gone uncollected. This, as the cash-strapped county's laid off hundreds of workers, cut services, and is now proposing consolidating police precincts.
There's revenue out there. Tens of millions of dollars of revenue just sitting on the streets.
The county union president says his workforce can boot and tow scofflaws and has offered to.
I think we can work together with them and bring this cash in.
The deal is under consideration. In a statement, a spokesman for the county executive says because the bulk of uncollected fines date back years before County Executive Mangano took office, the county is contracting with a firm to collect these dollars and is implementing a program to boot and tow scofflaws. So what's taking so long? The spokesman says they're exploring less expensive options. Critics see it a different way.
I hate pointing fingers of blame, but in my estimation, the ball was dropped.
Meanwhile, you may want to pay your tickets now. That deal with the union to boot and tow cars could happen within weeks. In Uniondale, Carolyn Gussoff, CBS 2 News.
And union leaders say they met with the Nassau County executive late today to try to hammer out a plan to finally collect those unpaid tickets.
Ahead on the news of layoffs and a police precinct revamp, but is it enough?
A state watchdog group is meeting today on the Nassau County executive's plan to plug the county's budget hole. News 12 Long Island's Jill Wagner is in Uniondale. Jill?
Well, that NIFA board meeting just wrapped up, and the board members say that so far, no, it does not look like the county executive has met that $150 million in savings. That is despite the layoffs and despite the plan to revamp the precincts.
They called us earlier today, which often happens on the day of one of our meetings when there's a deadline, to suggest that a plan exists, and hopefully they're right. But at this point, it is clear that they're going to be at least a day late on today's deadline and way more than $1 short.
The official word from the NIFA board today, the state watchdog agency, saying Nassau County Executive Ed Mangano has not reached the $150 million in savings from the county workforce. This is despite hundreds of layoffs, demotions, and incentives for workers to retire. Jerry Laracuda, president of the county's biggest union, says more than 200 of his members already lost their jobs, and he's worried more can come.
What I think you've got going on here is some kind of a match between this control board and this administration. And for either a lack of cooperation amongst the two parties, it looks like the little guy is the guy getting hurt here.
And I did reach out to the county executive for a comment. He just released this statement to News 12, quote, "We are on target to achieve the $150 million in savings pursuant to the budget and have scheduled a meeting on Friday with Chairman Stack to walk him through the savings plan. He was unavailable to meet today, so it will be interesting to see how this all plays out." We are in Uniondale. Jill Wagner, News 12 Long Island. Stone, Stacy.
All right, thank you.
Now, meantime, tonight, the big story on the island, the State of the County address. Nassau County Executive Ed Mangano preparing to deliver his third State of the County address. It happens tonight. We're going to see it here on News 12. So what should residents expect to hear from him? News 12 Long Island's Jill Wagner found out. Jill.
Well, Judy, tonight, County Executive Mangano will talk about how he's reformed government and consolidated departments to save money. And he'll announce a private development plan for the hub area.
The stage is set and the final preparations underway for Nassau Executive Ed Mangano's State of the County address.
Tonight, the county executive is going to reiterate his commitment to taxpayers, to cutting waste, to finding ways to reform government.
Senior Policy Advisor Brian Nevin says tonight Mangano will make a big announcement about private development in the hub area in Uniondale. Mangano has picked a contractor to build an expo and sports center by Mitchell Field. Another announcement, Mangano will lay out a new program to help returning war vets buy homes in Nassau. He'll also spend time tonight touting his record on the budget, saying he's consolidated government departments and shrunk the workforce to save money.
We've made efficiencies throughout government, cut over $200 million in spending.
Immediately following the county executive's address, the Democrats will have their turn for rebuttal. And Minority Leader Kavan Abrahams tells me Mangano's numbers just don't add up.
This is another case of Mangano math.
Abraham says all of the county executive's cuts have actually saved Nassau much less. And it's meant painfully laying off hundreds of workers and consolidating police precincts.
We feel that the precinct cuts jeopardize public safety.
So what do residents think of the state of Nassau?
We don't have the services that we need, that we're paying for.
Taxes are way too high.
Well, the only thing that I'm concerned about is closing of the police precincts. That's one big thing because of the crime wave that's been going on with the home break-ins and everything else. I mean, other than that, I think he's doing all right. You got to cut someplace.
Many Nassau residents I spoke with say they are concerned about those cuts, but they don't want to see taxes go up, and they say they will be watching tonight. Judy.
Thank you very much, Jill. A lot of people watching tonight. County Executive Ed Mangano delivering his State of the County address. It happens right here on News 12 Long Island tonight, beginning at 7 o'clock. Now, immediately following, we're going to have the Democratic rebuttal, and then Lee Tyrell will host a live call-in talk show, and that's where you can share your concerns, questions, and opinions.
Well, both Nassau and Suffolk are struggling to contain those ballooning budget deficits, and labor unions are being asked for some givebacks. So are those unions doing enough to help, or is it really not their problem? Our own Eileen LaPalmer has the results of an exclusive News 12 Hofstra poll. It's a story you'll see only on 12.
It's a familiar cycle. Unions rally to hold on to their benefits as politicians push for givebacks or concessions from the unions to balance their budgets.
Your expenses have exceeded your revenues.
So do you think the unions have given enough? Robert Shapiro thinks so.
I think they've made more than their share of concessions.
And according to the latest News 12 Long Island Hofstra poll, 35% of people agree with Robert. The unions have already given enough. But 53% say the unions should give more.
But there is a difference along county lines. 56% of Nassau respondents think that unions could give back more as compared to 49% of those who responded from Suffolk.
They believe we're the reasons for the high taxes.
CSE President Jerry Laracuda says politicians unfairly blame unions for their own fiscal mismanagement. He points out that his union has given back.
This union alone, since 2008, has
conceded $130 million.
But still, Long Islanders like Barbara and Austin tell me they believe there is more room for union sacrifice.
The employees of the county can give back more if they want to keep more of their own employees.
They're not giving back very expensive health and pension benefits that the rest of us have had to give back since the 80s and 90s.
In Mineola, Eileen LaPalmer, News 12 Long Island.
I'm guilty.
Pension reform signed into law today in Albany. The landmark legislation changes future government workers' retirement benefits and saves New York State billions. CBS 2's Carolyn Gussoff has the story.
A victory lap for Governor Cuomo signing into law pension reform that's years in the making. Reform will not affect current government workers, but reduces benefits for future workers.
It's not overly dramatic to say if these pension costs were allowed to continue, you would see cities and towns across this state going bankrupt. Period.
The plan raises state workers' retirement age from 62 to 63. It increases employee pension contributions. Workers will contribute 3 to 6% of their salaries. And the controversial loading up on overtime before retirement to pad pensions will be eliminated by averaging it over 5 years. New York City police and firefighters are exempt from the changes. Cuomo backed off on even deeper cuts, but called this a major accomplishment.
If you're concerned about the businesses of this state and you want businesses coming and not leaving, then you have to do pension reform.
But union leaders say it won't help local governments in the short run and picks on the working man. And current workers like John Aloisio wonder how new hires will afford to make ends meet.
Maybe I'm making 17 grand, and to live on that in Nassau County is tremendously hard.
Taxpayers say they empathize with government workers, but also worry about themselves.
Nobody wants to pay more taxes.
The pension changes affect workers hired after April 1st. Counties like Nassau and Suffolk facing hundreds of millions of dollars in deficits won't reap the benefits for years. In Mineola, Carolyn Gussoff, CBS 2 News.
Well, tonight there are accusations of a cover-up regarding one of the suspects arrested for a carjacking that ended with a crash at a North Merrick elementary school. Some believe the suspect's probation records were altered after his arrest. Eileen LaPalmer has the story you saw first on 12.
I believe it could be a crime.
The president of the union that represents probation officers says supervisors in the department are routinely stopping people on probation from being rearrested when they violate terms of their release. Jerry Laracuda says the most recent example involves a female probation officer who tried to get 20-year-old Edwin Flores locked up again right before he was allegedly involved in last week's carjacking. The union says the probation officer tried on 6 occasions in about the last month to have Edwin Flores rearrested for violating terms of his probation, but she needed her supervisor's signature, and the union says the supervisor refused to sign off on it. Laracuda says the probation officer had proof of this until the day after the carjacking.
Her original violation was removed. It was nowhere to be found.
But why would a probation supervisor not want someone who violated probation to be rearrested? Laracuda says it's done to make the head of the probation department, John Fowle, look good.
Being able to say that I'm the new director, and since I took over, you know, we violated X amount, 20% less than what used to be done. You know, we have a better grip on probationers. We're doing a much better job.
The probation department did not return calls for comment. 4 Nassau police officers were injured trying to stop the carjacking. PBA President Jim Carver says
it was a failure of the administration to follow through with that. Obviously, they're worried about something. That's why they're covering up.
County Executive Ed Mangano's office says the county executive has asked the district attorney to review the matter, and the DA's office confirms they are now investigating the allegations. Eileen LaPalmer, News 12 Long Island.
The news at 11 continues.
After a carjacking and police chase last week, union leaders say they've uncovered some disturbing information regarding one of the alleged carjackers in the Nassau Probation Department.
Union leaders say there are big problems at the Nassau County Probation Department these days. They say a probation officer's report in early March detailing how a certain probationer had missed appointments and several other violations suddenly disappeared.
She was then told to sign a new violation of probation, which they made. the administration wrote, and it sat on the desk of her supervisor.
Laracuta says that officer came here to his office for help. CSEA attorneys told her to sign the report, but attach a letter detailing her account of the probationer's violations. That probationer is Edwin Flores, who authorities say is the same man involved in the Hicksville carjacking last Tuesday afternoon and a police chase which ended with 2 cars crashing into this North Merrick Elementary School.
When a probation officer sees there's a violation, and then the administration says, well, no, let's disregard that. That's not right. It's almost like putting these people back on the street again to sit there and do more destruction.
Now, according to union leaders, any one of Flores' violations would have landed him in jail. So that means last week's carjacking and subsequent crash at the elementary school might have never occurred. And Laracuta says this female officer is not the first one. He has at least one probation officer. A year and a half ago.
So we need to get to the bottom of this finally and find out, how is he running this department? Is he following all state regulations? And was there a crime committed here?
In Mineola, Christina Renault, TV 10 and 55 News.
Now, Nassau County Executive Ed Mangano told the News at 11 he has asked the district attorney to review this matter immediately.
Now, the Nassau executive wants out of the sewer business. Ed Mangano says his plan will shave hundreds of millions of dollars from the county's debt. News 12 Long Island's Drew Scott has more.
County Executive Ed Mangano announced he has a plan to have a private company run Nassau's sewer system. He calls it a debt reduction and stabilization plan. United Water Company of New Jersey and a finance company, to be announced later, would buy down a quarter of the county's debt, $750 million, and would upgrade the aging Bay Park and Cedar Creek waste treatment plants.
This option is a very, very appealing option with respect to Nassau County, correcting the issues that we're facing.
Democrats, however, like legislator Wayne Wink, call the move a Hail Mary pass, a short-term fix for Nassau's $3 billion budget deficit that may cost taxpayers more.
Just pushing it off onto the private sector and onto a private operator doesn't mean the government is somehow costing them less. In fact, government will cost them more.
CSEA Union President Jerry Laracuta, who has already lost 300 of his workers to budget cuts, says he's skeptical of the Mangano plan.
We don't believe that private companies can do public work as well as public workers. We've always said that.
But Mangano promises no water or sewer rate hikes for 3 years, and some residents say if it pays down county debt, why not?
Maybe that's one way of doing it.
The plan calls for 3 public input sessions. Then it requires the approval of not only the county legislature, but also the Nassau Interim Finance Authority. Final implementation of the plan could take place by December of 2012. In Mineola, Drew Scott, News 12 Long Island.